Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. As you could tell by the title of today's video, it is my official US snowfall forecast 2019-2020. I already did a video for the Northeast showing how much snowfall they will get, but it really didn't resonate with you guys. For some reason, it didn't get as much views as I wanted it to. I wanted more people to get, see it, because I know many people, for some reason, didn't get it recommended to them. So I just decided to do the whole United States snowfall forecast all at once for the whole winter. It's for 2019-2020, obviously. So, let's get into this video. Before we do, however, really consider subscribing to this channel. Yeah, if you want to, check out this channel, check out more of my videos, feel free to do so. Plenty of video information about the latest, weather updates, winter storms, hurricanes, weather patterns, all sorts. Consider subscribing and consider liking the video if you are even remotely enjoying this. So right now, let's just look at quickly what the El Nino La Nina episodes were in the past. You could see we were in an El Nino. This actually is supposed to be updated by now. There's an updated version of this. I just didn't update it in this screenshot in particular, but we are already in a neutral pattern. And if I were to show you this next image, the probabilistic ENSO or ENSO outlook, you could see an ENSO neutral right there. ENSO neutral is favored, or is most likely to continue through the northern hemisphere spring 2020. So what does that mean? Well, I'll get to that in just a minute, but first, I just want to demonstrate that 85%, 75%, and it stays the top most likely ENSO out of all the El Nino and La Nina possibilities. You can see the neutral kind of dominates it. And this is an update as of September 12th, which may not seem recent. That's almost 2 weeks ago. Well, it is recent. Exactly 2 weeks ago, actually, last Thursday, and 2 weeks Thursday. But this doesn't change often. That's why they only update it once a month. So 2 weeks, that's not going to make a big difference. It is still an ENSO neutral. This is what the models are showing. This is the latest one, issued 23rd of September. They update this, I think, weekly. But you can see that this one actually shows a spike going into an El Nino, possibly. But mainly, the main point is, you can see it's gonna most likely be a neutral. Some are showing an El Nino. A few are showing a La Nina, but the most, again, that little line, the black line, that black dashed line that shows us where the average is, that they're showing a neutral. So here's another look at the models. Here's like that 0.5. Here's for where the El Nino class. Here's where the El Nino is. Here's where the La Nina is. You see, this one actually shows none for the La Nina, several for the El Nino, majority in the neutral. So I think now this, okay, so yeah, basically all you need to know, neutral conditions are present. Not an El Nino, not a La Nina. That's why ENSO alert system status is not active. There's no such thing as a neutral advisory or outlook or watch. They have that for a La Nina or an El Nino, but not for a neutral, since it's kind of in between, though it could be equally as impactful. So first I want to focus on this and quickly show you what the impacts are of a neutral. Most people already know what the impacts of a neutral are, but if you're new and you don't, you can see that what it basically does, it causes the jet stream, the polar jet stream, which brings the cold air in the wintertime, to, if you were to take a kind of like a snapshot of the winter overall, this is what it would look like. Jet stream diving down into the mid-south and moving out into the Atlantic. So, obviously the cold air would have access to a good portion of the country, and again, this varies. Sometimes a jet stream could take a path like this, sometimes barely clipping the US, sometimes, again, very far to the south. So, we have cold conditions up here. And if you were to override them with wet and warm conditions, which usually during a neutral year, winter, we have this subtropical jet stream riding up to the north, a little bit further to north than typical, but not out of norm as much as a polar jet stream is out of norm. In the case that it dips way to the south, these two things kind of collide, and where these two things kind of override, the cold air gets a little bit further to the south and meets this wet and warm air, this could produce, some snow across the mid-south. So more above average snow for the south usually occurs with neutral years, and above average snow for the northeast, especially because some of these storms could develop in these wet and warm conditions, kind of like I like to compare it to bacteria growth, and this kind of escalates and moves off the east coast and could produce, again, the nor'easter. And then usually we need there's usually two pieces to a nor'easter. There's usually that southern component and the northern component, which is usually an Alberta Clipper, which could leave many of these locations with plenty of snow as well. So overall, snow is favored for many of these locations with a neutral pattern. Now I want to quickly go back to this image, which I showed you briefly a couple minutes ago. This is as of September 25th, the sea surface temperatures. Now, why does this matter? Well, first off, this is the Enzo region, and you can see here's a measure of the cooler temperatures. It may seem like there's a La Nina, because a La Nina is negative 0.5 degrees or lower, but if you look out further into the Pacific, or the Enzo region, which is in the Pacific, you notice there's warm colors or oranges, and that's more of an El Nino. So basically, whatever you think it may look like at this point, it's not. It's a combination. It's a neutral, and that's most likely to stay. If anything, it's most likely going to turn into a slight El Nino. If anything goes askew or astray. But at this point, it seems most models are indicating toward neutral, like I showed earlier. But what I wanted to really demonstrate here is you can see this warm water across much of the northern Pacific Ocean, the Gulf of Alaska. Not always is above average. This isn't showing the water temperatures. This is showing where it is above average and where it is below average. And you can see that actually for these locations it's above average. And if we were to explain this meteorologically, warm water usually causes warm air to rise. It creates a dome of high pressure, or dome of warm air. A high pressure usually develops, and if we were to look at a graphical map, there's probably several high pressures coming in here, dominating the region. All high pressure spin clockwise, so they veer their winds kind of like this, in this sort of fashion. Obviously this could break down, this isn't just there to park the whole time, but usually when there is above average conditions in terms of the sea surface temperatures, there's way more prone to do so. And the jet stream meandering its way from Europe and Eurasia and from Asia encounters this high pressure, and you can see it could either go up and over, and it doesn't go it could either go up or down. I meant to say it doesn't really go down, because again these winds are kind of preventing it from doing that. So it goes over, and then kind of like a rubber band, in order to equal itself out. How if you pull a rubber band if you have a rubber band, is kind of strained across two poles, and you pull on it, then it bounces back in this direction equally as much, and then it's lighter and lighter and lighter, and then it comes back into the position. So that's the same thing with the jet stream. You kind of pull on it, and then it needs to bounce back into position, so it slowly does so. But while it does that, you can see it brings very chilly conditions to the U.S. that would bring, again, possibly some snow, some cold for the south, the east, and northwest. Many locations would benefit in terms of the snow aspect from this. So now let's move on forward. I want to look at some of the anomalies which I have pulled up, and this basically is, as you can see right there, showing you March through May of this year to the spring. You may be wondering, why am I showing you this year's spring? What that has to do with this winter snowfall totals? Well, I compared chilly springs that were like this year's, because this year's, you can see March through May 2019 was a pretty chilly spring across a good portion of the country, including the north, South Dakota, Nebraska, especially getting that zone, and generally just the north. And I compared it to similar winters or similar springs, and I compiled a bunch of springs together, and then compared what those, what a chilly spring usually correlates to in terms of the winter snowfall or winter cold temperatures. And I will show you that in just a minute. So this was March of this year, 2019. You can see chilly. April was the warmest out of all of them. Pretty big concentration over the Great Lakes, but fairly warm across the central part of the country. And May was also pretty chilly. You could see a concentration of actually blue temperatures across blue colors, so below average temperatures across a good portion of the country, and then a little bit warmer quite a bit warmer across the southeast. Remember, that was a heat wave, and across the northwest. So basically, this, what you'll see next, may seem way more drastic than what this spring was, but you can see March through May, you have many springs compiled on top of each other. But notice how the increments are much smaller. So this dark purple is around -1.2 to -1.5, while this year's spring, in total, you could see that that blue was equivalent to -2. So that's actually a greater anomaly than what this color is. So that's, that's just, it's adjusted. So don't worry. But you can see March through May of all these years. And now I basically looked at how the winter of all these years looked like. And since, these springs were obviously similar to what we had this year. And this is what the November of all these springs looked like. Now, obviously, I don't think it'll be this cold because it's literally a cold spring compiled on top of the cold spring, compiled on top of the cold spring. So it's going to be a little bit of bias towards, a colder regime overall. But there is a definite correlation between a cold spring and a cold fall, and you can see, I don't know if you can see this, but it says November 2018, November 2014, November 2009, the same years that had those chilly spring, you could see from 2018, 2014, that same years, and you can see a chill across a good portion of the country. Now, to what extent this will hold true, we don't know. This could be, I think there will be some chill in November, below average, but could be either extremely below average or just slightly to, I can't predict it this far out at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. But this is what the December looked like. You could see pretty warm actually across a good portion of the country, so not necessarily good for snow production. But we got to also calculate in January, which was pretty chilly, and February, which was also chilly. And again, notice how this is the following year from that spring. So that spring happened, let's say 2015. That cold spring happened 2014. Now this is January of 2015. So what followed, and you can see it was pretty chilly, and February was chilly across a good almost all of the U.S. here. So that would lead to, again, an increased snowfall amount, but we all have to wait and see what the analogs are good. They are historically accurate. They're nice and fun to look at, but they aren't always true fortune or future tellers. But they definitely do have a truth in them, and we've used them in the past, and many people have used them in the past. Meteorologists have used them in the past, and they're a key factor in terms of the winter forecasts. And again, this was kind of like the whole winter as a whole. You could see of all those cold springs compiled. Pretty chilly, so good for snow production. This was my winter outlook this year at the beginning, and not really much has changed. In fact, I would probably increase this brutal or cold air even further to the south. I still think blizzards across the northeast. And again, I'm taking this in account, this forecast, and putting that into my final snow outlook. And again, this is just kind of the temperatures what I think will be this year, and if not, expand this chill a little bit further to the south and west. And this is my final snowfall forecast. So you could see that it's a little bit weird. It maybe seem like it has chicken pox over here, but I'll explain all in just a minute. So there was originally more colors to this. There was a dark purple, there was a dark red, and a really dark red. But then I basically decided to not do that because it looked kind of silly. It didn't really look pleasing to the eye. So basically what I did was, the red is anything around 80 inches and above. That's why it's a pretty big area. You can see across northwestern Wyoming, Montana. There originally was smaller circles and then even smaller spots, and that was supposed to mark 120 and above, 150 and above. But at this point, I just did 80 and above, or I think 90, or no, yeah, 80 and above. And anywhere you live in already, if you get 80 above, I think it will be considered a lot of snow. And I extended some of the regions where typically don't see 80 and above, the northeast and the east, basically the UP of Michigan, I added. So if you're looking at this and you're like, we usually don't see 80, well, this year you may, because of this really snowy winter I think is coming for the east. In the west, I kept generally the things the same for all of the, the whole total snowfalls. I generally just showed them as a little bit less maybe, or on average. In the east, I kind of showed more snow. But in the purple, you could see that was 60 to 80 inches of snow, and that is across again the North Dakota, Minnesota. Find your location and choose it out. Boston is applied to that. I think Boston usually doesn't see 60. I think this year they could. So this is what I think will be for this year. This isn't your average snowfall map. This is what I think will be for this year in particular. I based it off though the average. I was looking at the map while making this map. Again, the west doesn't have this purple color because it was just a little bit too sloppy. It didn't really look too good, and usually the locations or the amount of square inches on this map that was in the purple in the west was really small. It was just kind of like a highlight around these colors, because higher elevations usually it's a sharp contrast between little snow and lots of snow. So I just basically did the next color, which is this was 80 plus, it was 60 to 80. This is now 40 to 60. This pink color, 40 to 60 inches. You can see it extends into Chicago, northern Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Again, I think New York City may get 40 to 60, if not more. Lots of the west again. This blue color is 30 to 40. Then this lighter blue is 20 to 30 inches of snow. And again, many of these locations don't even see 10 inches sometimes, but I think this year they could definitely see as much as 20 across the east. The west, again, I kept things generally the same. And then this light blue is 10 to 20 inches. And notice how some of these areas don't have any color, any shading of color. I just did that just for safety reasons, in terms of I don't want to predict 10 inches of snow in southern Alabama and then they see none. I think though that you have an increased and elevated chance for seeing some snow across the areas where typically you may just see an inch or nothing. So just keep that in mind. The south, I made a video on it. It seems pretty good for that snow this year. So thank you guys so much for watching. Consider liking this video, consider subscribing to this channel. Catch you all guys in the next episode. See ya. Bye.